I live in a gated community which has a public swimming pool. I live there with my parents and my sister. There's guards at every few blocks and it's supposed to be pretty safe. So when I was about 12 or 13, I decided that I really wanted to swim, and as my house pool was getting clean that day, I'd go to the public pool. Both my parents work, so neither of them were home, so it was just my sister and I. As I was very smart back then, I decided to walk instead of taking my driver, as the pool was only 10 minutes away. Without telling anyone, I left and began to walk. 2 minutes pass by, and this small white car pulls up next to me and stops. I kept walking, so it decided to slowly drive beside me. Inside, there was a man, wearing all black, and he looked like he was in his early 30s. He starts talking to me and says, "Oh, hello, darling. How are you?" I kept walking, and as I didn't want to be rude, I decided to answer him with a "fine." He continues by asking me, "Do you not remember me, sweetie?" I said no. He then says, "Oh, I'm a friend of your dad's. He told me to give you a ride." I then asked him, "Give me a ride where?" He says, "To your dad's office." I then said, "Where does my dad work?" I had asked this as this man hadn't mentioned my name once, and my dad's office had a very strict no kid policy, and my dad still had more than 5 hours before he got off, so there was no sense in me going to his office. Also, I had never seen this man in my life before. He said, "That's not the point. Just get in, I will drive you there." I refused to get in and increased my pace. The swimming pool was now 5 or 6 minutes away. He continues to drive next to me, persuading me to get in, and if I didn't, my father would be mad. When I asked him my dad's name, he evaded the question again. He then asked me where I was going, so I told him I was going to the swimming pool. I have no idea why I told him, by the way. He then tells me to get in and he'll drive me there. When I refused again, he got angry and stopped the car. Now, me being completely freaked out, I proceed to run as fast as I can, which wasn't really fast. There was this small cafe right ahead of me, which I went to quite frequently, so I decided to run in there and ask for help, as the swimming pool was still a few minutes away. While running towards the cafe, I looked behind to see if the man was still behind me, or if he had driven away. To my surprise, he had now gotten out of his car and was running towards me. When I made it into the cafe, I turned around to see if the man was still there. He had now stopped in the middle of the road a few feet away from the cafe and was staring at me. I went up to the cashier and told her what was going on and asked for help. She then told her manager, who then called the police and my parents. By the time the police arrived, the man was nowhere to be found, and the police told my parents of recent kidnapping that had been going on in the area. Also, my dad hasn't sent anyone to pick me up, so he was very confused by this. Here's a guide for the story. E is my older cousin, 11. D is the smaller one, also 11. L is cousin's friend, also 11, and I was 10 at the time. Picture this. 4 young children in bathing suits playing in the water slide in the front yard. E and D lived on the road next to the highway, so everyone could see us. I don't remember everything, as this was 3 years ago, but I asked E, and she told me some things. We got bored of the water slide and wanted to go for a walk. We were walking down the alleyway when we came across the house with the pit bulls. I have a huge soft spot for dogs, so I was stoked. We go to the door and ask if we can pet the dogs. He says yes and lets them out. We start playing, then he says something of, "Hey, I have an old swimming pool. Would you like to swim?" E said it was something like that. Us, being the smart kids we are, went to ask our aunt. My aunt is a very laid-back person, grew up in the small town, so trusts everyone. She said yes, and we bowled to him. It was hot, so we were really happy to go swimming. He then leads us to the back of a truck that had a pool liner in it and filled with water. We jump in and he tells us to do whatever we want. We start to chill and just splash when Elle sees him from the window looking at us. Guys, look. We look over and he's watching us. I say it's probably for safety to make sure no one kidnaps us. Oh, the irony. It's been about 20 minutes at this point. He comes out and tells us that he has to run into town, and we could come in the house for a second while he leaves. We say no and go. We told our aunt, and she really didn't care. My mom was pissed though, and I couldn't come over for a little while because my cousins and I should have known better. On a side note, I can't remember the name at the moment, but it wasn't a water slide. It was where you run and slide on your belly. A slip and slide? Not sure. Could it have been a lonely old man? Yes. Was it creepy? Yes. Could he have been waiting to kidnap us? Who knows? I live in a safe country. Crime rates and cases of violence are quite low compared to the other countries. So, I grew up having this false sense of security, but my view on the place I live in all changed when I was 16. I was on my weekly visit to the indoor swimming pool. I really enjoyed swimming, and it was a change to my otherwise very routine-like life. Well, after my experience that day, I wouldn't visit the swimming pools again, at least for now. You see, I was just minding my own business, swimming around in the largest pool in the building, when I noticed a man staring at me just a couple meters away. He was older than me, about in his mid-20s. He looked like he was or had an immigrant background. He didn't do anything wrong. He only looked at me when I swam around, so my alarm bells weren't going off yet. But being a 16-year-old girl, I felt a bit awkward. So, I just decided to ignore him, and eventually moved to a pool that had diving boards. It was fine for a minute or two, until the man who was staring at me before also arrived at the pool. It would have been fine, but he didn't even jump from the boards and just swam in a small corner while staring at me. Now I was feeling really creeped out. It was already creepy enough, but something about his constant stare really made me want to run. I left that pool and once again I was at the larger one. So, lo and behold, after just a few seconds, the man also stepped in. Even though my alarm bells were chiming, I decided to ignore him. And even if he tried something, I was sure that the lifeguards or someone would come to my rescue. Time went on and I changed between pools from time to time, and every time I moved, the man followed. Eventually I couldn't take it anymore and decided to leave. Before leaving the building though, I spent a longer time than usual at the sauna and in the showers. I hoped that by the time I left, the man would have already left as well. That wasn't the case though. When I walked out of the ladies' locker room, there he was, talking to a female desk clerk inquiring about bus schedules in broken English. He hadn't seen me yet, so as fast as I could, trying to be as silent as possible, I headed to the front door. Damn, my high heels though. So because my shoes made too much noise, he turned to look at me, and the face he made after seeing me, oh man, it still makes me shiver even after all these years. On his face dawned the creepiest smile I'd ever seen. I looked at him for a split second and walked through the door, taking my phone out of my pocket. It was already dark outside, and I could hear his footsteps growing closer and closer every second. I meant to go to my mother's workplace after swimming, so that she and I could go home together. Though now that this creep was following me, I wasn't going to do that. It was because the walkways that I had to take to get to that part of the town were too isolated. While I was thinking about my options, I was also writing to my group chat. I told my friends everything that was going on and at the moment, so if the man tried to do anything, they would know where I am. The guy with the creepy stare was getting closer and walking faster. Honestly, he was right behind me. I don't think my heart has ever beaten that fast. Then, he walked right past me. Had I overreacted that whole time? Maybe I was just being paranoid. My heartbeat at this point had calmed down, but I was still wary and decided to turn left towards the supermarket. You had to walk by a couple parking lots and then I'd be surrounded by people. Only a few seconds after I turned left, I heard them again. The footsteps. I tried to resist looking behind me, but I couldn't. He was walking behind me again, and he had that weird predatory gaze and smile on his face. I was properly freaking out now. Why would he walk past me, but as soon as I turned left, he followed me? I looked around, hoping that I could spot people nearby. I didn't. Only people near were in their cars, and we were walking away from the road. He was picking up his pace again, and I was telling my friends my exact location. They were freaking out, and so was I. The man was basically breathing down my neck now, and I worried that if I started running, he would attack me. Though if he wanted, he could do it anyways. He was so close that I could hear his breathing. Then I heard him sniff me. Actually sniff me. I picked up my pace almost to a running speed when a car drove to the nearest parking lot. Thank God for that car. If it didn't arrive, I don't know what would have happened to me. The man noticed the car too and immediately slowed down. I decided to walk to the supermarket through the parking lots. So, I walked across the grass into safety. I took one last look at the guy, and the look on his face was horrifying. He glared at me, his teeth almost bared from the scowl that he wore. After that, I didn't look back and walked to the store, my heart still beating hard. I leaned against a wall and texted my friends that I was fine. Moments later, I texted my mom to come pick me up from the store. When she arrived, I didn't tell her what happened. To this day, I wondered why I didn't tell her anything. That was probably because I was embarrassed. Why? I'm not sure myself. The whole car ride home, I was holding back tears. It was the first time anything like this had happened to me. Even though me and the creepy man never exchanged a word, his face is burned in my brain. I wish I had informed the police, because the thing that haunts me even more than his stare is that he had done what he intended to do to me to someone else, and succeeded. We've been going to a local pool for 6+ weeks for swimming lessons. This was the last week, and as soon as I had my son, 16 months, dressed, an old 70-year-old plus woman walked in. She immediately, almost before turning the corner, said, "How old is he?" I loved showing off my baby boy, but she was immediately creeping me out. She was standing less than 1.5 feet from my face, and I couldn't back up as I was in a corner. She began asking in a monotone and low voice all kinds of questions about him and how old he was. I answered vaguely and only gave as much info as I'd give any other stranger, his age and name. She then asked me again when he was born, and I said August. She then said, "I'm born in February, my mom in October, my dad in July, my brother in December." She listed another brother and some grandkids as well, but I was now frozen, as those are the exact same birth months as my family, down to the family member. She continued to ask the same questions and tell me the same info over and over. At one point looking at my son, and then me, and says in a dull and creepy voice, "I'm sorry. I just want to take him and go." I don't respond to this. At this point, I was starting to get my son's clothes wet because I'm in my bathing suit, holding him freshly dressed, so I'm getting a little antsy and also freaked out. She looks at me and says in her monotone, slightly annoyed voice, "I'm bothering you, aren't I?" I start to say no, I just need to get dressed, and she cuts me off and begins to ask about my son's eye color. I start to say that they are blue, and she again cuts me off and asks what color mine are. I then again start to say blue, and she reaches to my face and uses her fingers to open my eye. She then agrees that they are blue and looks back at my son. She doesn't touch him, thankfully, but says, "They are blue. Just be happy they are not black," and gives a monotone laugh. All in all, she made me extremely uncomfortable. My son wasn't in danger, and I'm the most passive person in the world. I wasn't sure what to make of her at the time, so I remained as friendly as possible, but stopped adding anything to the conversation after she rattled off her family's birthdays that are the exact same as mine. I don't know what to make of any of this.